Welcome back. Standard 2 of the Code of Ethics is all about the integrity of the capital markets and obviously in a particular way looking at how we deal with information and how we work with that information or take advantage of that information. So a lot here to do with material information, non-material, etc. So we'll go through a couple of key points out of this section and then look at some examples as we've done previously. So the first one is that communicating and trading can be a breach. Now, it depends on the timing of it. There has to be sufficient time for clients to act. So for instance, if you have clients that you're advising and you were to trade before sending out an update to them, that obviously would be a breach. If you were to trade for a family account, that would be a breach as well. But if you make sure that the information, the advice that you're giving to your clients goes out, and then you trade after sufficient time for your clients to act, then that's not a breach. And you can do that for your personal account. Obviously, it becomes a little bit different if you are trading on behalf of clients. Well, then obviously you trade. And when you have that mix of, okay, I am trading on behalf of clients, but also sending out advice to different clients, well, there can be a little bit of a grey area there. So you do need to be careful of that. Now, there's a couple of things to remember here. It is okay to have different classes of clients. So you may have a premium level client and they are going to get the notification first. And then you have a cheaper type of subscription and they may get it second after a certain period of time. That's okay. It's not a problem to have that. And you'll often see questions in the exams around this where it's like, you know, you're giving different favoritism to higher paying clients. Is that a breach? Of course, it's not a breach because that's okay. You're allowed to have those different levels. The other type of question that comes up around this area is you're trading on behalf of a family member. Now, if the family member isn't paying for your service, and you're giving them information above everyone else, then that's a problem. But if the family member is a fee-paying client of your business, the business that you're working for, and you give them the information the same time you give all the other clients the information, that's fine. So again, this is often a trick question that you'll see because it's saying you have a family member as a fee-paying client and you are giving them information with all your other clients. And, you know, you can be tricked into thinking that that's a breach, but it's not. That's okay. So remember that you can have different levels. You can have family members so long as they are fee-paying, the same as everybody else. But any other way, if you trade for your own account, you trade for a family account, you tell a family member who is not fee paying, then that would be a breach of this standard. Okay, firms should use barriers to information. So when you have merchant banking and investment banking in the same organization, this really came out around 2008, that there needs to be these barriers. There needs to be firewalls in place between the two departments, that they can't share information, that the investment branch isn't getting a unfair advantage over everybody else by getting access to that information first. And that's again the role of compliance in these larger organizations, is to make sure that those firewalls are being maintained and that information isn't crossing that firewall. We talk a lot in this section about insider information and etc. And obviously trading on that. You can't trade on non-public information, which is material, etc. So, for instance, if you had a lunch with a director of a company and they had mentioned that they were going into liquidation, or, you know, they were about to do a takeover of a different company, and you traded on that information, then that would be a breach because you're trading on insider information. One of the ways that people used to try to get around this is selectively disclose little pieces of information to try and make the information public so that they wouldn't get in trouble with this. But again, that is a breach of this. If you're selectively going through the information that you have and you're putting the information out so that it's now public information and you can act on it quickly, that's a breach. You're not allowed to do that. It's really got to come from the company putting out their own press releases, informing the market of what's going on. Unreliable source and speculation is not considered material information. So there's this real distinction between what is material information and non-material. So remember, material information basically means that with that knowledge or that information, it makes a material difference to the share price. It's going to have an impact. So a liquidation, speculation, a takeover event, a firing of a CEO or something like that, they all have an effect on the share price. And we would expect to see that reflected in share price when that news becomes available to the wider market. So that would be material information because it has a material effect on the share price. Non-material information is, the company is putting in more parking space around their office. Well, that's not necessarily going to have a direct effect on the share price, but if you're a clever analyst, you may look at that information and say, well, they must be hiring. They must be thinking that there's going to be growth in the company. This actually may be a good buy for a long-term investment. So you can look at this, as I said, from non-material. So putting car parks in, probably not going to have a share price impact. So you can consider that to be non-material information. If it is non-material and no one else knows about it, you're free to trade upon it. It's only if it's material information and no one else knows about it that you are not allowed to trade on it. By law in most jurisdictions, but definitely by the standards here in the Code of Ethics. Remember, we already talked about in Standard 1 that you've just got to adhere to whichever is the most strict. And so in this case, obviously the standard is most strict. Unreliable sources is not considered material information. So that's the other note we have here. Essentially what that's saying is that if you've got some information and it's unreliable, it's kind of speculation, even though if it was true, it could be considered to be material information because it's unreliable. It hasn't come from the company, it hasn't come from a director. It's kind of like someone's putting together information themselves, and it may be kind of hearsay. That's fine. It's not considered to be material information. The last one, obviously, is mosaic theory. There'll be questions on this. Think of it, mosaic tiles made up, a whole big image made up of lots of little tiles. Same thing here. You, as an analyst with your experience, you're getting that piece of information about a new parking lot, car park around the offices. You are getting information about a couple of, lots of little things which are non-material, and they may be public, they may not be public, but you're piecing it all together and coming up with a picture and basically trading or recommending to your clients to trade based on that information, and that's okay. So the mosaic theory is acceptable. Of course, you need to document everything so that were questions to be asked why you got in before anyone else and you made so much money for your clients, you would have to have a justification behind why you gave that recommendation to your clients. We talk a little bit more about that in the record keeping section as well. All right, so let's have a look at a couple of examples here. A CFA Institute member is a US citizen living and working in a foreign country. That country has no laws against insider trading. Based on this information, the CFA Institute member may, or what is it? And we've already talked about this. Obviously, they can B, trade with the information, C, trade as long as it's not with a client where there's laws against it, D, not trade at all based on the rules of the SEC. Now, this is the type of question you have to be careful of, because obviously we have A, not trade, and D, not trade, but they're with different clarifications. So D's saying because of the SEC. Well, you're living in a different country where the SEC has no jurisdiction. So D is not correct. If you are a US citizen living and working in the US, then D would be correct. So in this case, it's A, not trade using insider information based upon the CFA Institute standards. Okay, moving on to Standard 2B. So the second part of Standard 2, which is the market manipulation section. So anytime investment promotions are disguised as research, that is a breach. So we can do, basically, if we're trying to sell an IPO or encourage people to buy or act or trade in the market, and we make that look like research instead of a marketing piece, then that would be a breach. Again, this is a really hard grey area. If this is the work that you're in, but you've just got to be very clear on research and what is actually a promotion or marketing, etc. No spreading of false rumours or artificial trading, those are breaches as well. So again, false rumours, putting out to maybe journalists that something's great going to happen to a company that you want to sell a position in. That obviously would be a breach. Artificially trading, so pumping up the stock, buying and buying and buying to try and get a lot of people interested in the stock. And the moment that they're all wanting to buy, you start selling everything. Pumping and dumping, obviously a breach as well. Liquidity pumping, again, is very similar, where adding liquidity to give people unrealistic confidence in that security, again, would be a breach. And so, anything like that, it's got to be disclosed what you're doing. So if you're taking a position, there has to be a justification behind that position, and you need to make sure that you're doing it for the express purpose of investment, not trying to take advantage of other market participants, etc. No manipulation of model inputs. So again, this is an example that probably affects the technical analysts and quant analysts more, where we can be very selective about the inputs that we use or the time periods that we use for our tests and back tests and quantitative tests. So we've got to be very careful about that we're not manipulating. For instance, I may have a model that's pretty average, but worked fantastic in the recent 3-year bull market. And so I take the last 3 years and I use that as my justification to bring investors in to the fund that I'm creating based on that model. So again, we have to be very clear that we are being as robust as possible in our testing, in our reporting of results, in discriminating the market into its different phases so that we can communicate that to clients, and clients are aware of all the risks associated with any sort of strategy. Okay, so a question on this section of the standard. All of the following are violations of Standard 2B, market manipulation, except... So we've got a list here. Let's go through them. Securing a controlling interest in an equity security in order to influence the price of a related derivative instrument. So again, we're not directly trading in the derivative, but we are trading in the underlying or some other related security only so that we can influence the derivative. And so that's obviously a breach there. B, exploiting differences in market inefficiencies. That used to be a big item when we had different markets trading the same security, but probably maybe before the internet, where there can be some inefficiencies, but there's still opportunities at high frequency trading. So is that a market manipulation? I tend to say no. That's just really taking advantage of normal market behavior. It's not enticing somebody to act by our trading. We're just trading for our own benefit. That's fine. Disseminating misleading information about the development of new products and technologies, obviously a breach. It's misleading information. Well, again, we're doing it to entice people to act in a certain way. Spreading false rumors about a firm to encourage trading by others, obviously a breach as well. So all of these are violations except B, exploiting differences in market inefficiencies. That's perfectly okay. All right, we'll continue on with standard 3.